Hi everybody. As I just posted that I'm on my desktop, so typing is up here, and so I have got myself in a place now where I can actually see your questions and comments coming in, so I should be able to answer things. And we'll see how that goes. But if I miss anybody, I'll respond in this feed after the live is gone. Just waiting a couple of minutes. I'll start sharp at 8. I show 7:58 at the moment, and I'm downing a coffee. Keep myself alive. Ah, that's so good. Hi, Carmen. So who do we have? We have Nat, we have Sheila, we have Debbie, we have Maria, we have Diane, and Carmen so far, which is awesome. Ooh, I'm looking at everybody's badges. Top fan badges and follower badges. That's cool. I like being on the store site. You get way more information. I've been playing all day with this fluffy stuff and I'm just loving it. And I still have a million ideas about things I want to do, but at least for now I have a few to share with you, and I'm going to show you a couple. Alrighty. Okay, it is 8 o'clock, so I am going to get started right away. So as you know, October is Fluffy Stuff Month, and we've been seeing a number of different things that the fluffy stuff has been used for in the last couple of weeks. I'm maybe going to do something a little different. I know that Darlene is still to come. Hi, Carolyn. And yes, you've done very little today. I wouldn't share that, Nat. It's a public forum. Okay, so fluffy stuff. Fluffy stuff is that neat stuff that when you put it on paper and you heat it, it expands. And I find that pretty cool, just all on its own. And I've seen the other two team members' videos and how they've used it. Hi, Liz. And I find that it's a really interesting product. So today I wanted to do something a little different with it. So I'm going to be demonstrating the use of it as a texture paste and in a stencil. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. So the first thing I just want to let you know is that I'm using Distress ink and some oxide spray. I have used in my samples the Grit Paste Snowfall and the Crackle Paste Icicle, which came with the Festive collection. I'm using some archival reinkers, not the regular distress reinkers, but the archival reinkers, because if you use the distress reinkers, the color will come out if you add water. And I've got some, what is this? This is Crafter's Workshop White Gesso. And just a couple of things I've found in playing around today. So if you want to have a fluffy stuff that holds its form and has a little bit more of a binding to it, so that when you touch it or if you put some ink on top of it, you're not scraping it off the paper, then simply mix the two things together. So take some gesso or some texture paste and mix it in with the fluffy stuff. And what that does is still gives you the quality of bubble, but it gives that hardness factor so that your fluffy stuff is a little stronger to take some abuse if you want to go over top of it with another stencil, or if you want to take your brush and brush on some ink. So just keep that in mind. That's one way that you can get around having it all crumble off your page if you try to do something extra with it. Another thing that I noticed today was I really tried hard to burn this, and I found I couldn't really overcook it, which was pretty unusual. There are other fluffy products out there, and I think we do have them in the store. One is applique, and applique burns really easy, but this stuff was much harder to burn, and which is great on one hand if you're using it for it being white and wanting to keep it white. Not so great on the other hand if, in the case I was using it for, I actually wanted to burn it and to get some of that scorchedness into it. So, but I mean, there's other ways to do that. You can do that with inks and things. But that was an eye-opener for me, which is, I mean, good in terms of what it's generally used for. All right, so I am doing 2 cards at one time. One is going to have color underneath the fluffy stuff application, and the other one I'm going to put color on top. So the first thing I'm going to do, I've got 3 colors of ink. I've got Stormy Sky, Chip Sapphire, and Wild Honey. And I am going to apply the color to the one that says color underneath. And that's why I marked it, so I don't forget, because the brain isn't functioning these days. All right, so this is Stormy Sky, and I'm just going to rub Stormy Sky on. And I'm not really worried if I get ridges and things in it. You may want to do things quite differently if you're worried about that, but I just want to get the color on there because I'm going to do technique to it afterwards. And I'm just going to do half and half with Chip Sapphire. So as always, I keep my colors separate, and I'm using I forget the brand of these. I should have checked that before I got on. Anyway, they are the brush version of blenders, and they're the ones that are more ergonomic. I find that the ones that are like makeup brushes are starting to hurt my arthritis. It could just be my arthritis that's the problem, and where I have arthritis, because I know lots of people use them and they don't have any issues at all. But I like this because it's down here I'm working it, not up here. And I don't have to put the same amount of pressure. So just for those of you that are struggling with your brushes, you might want to switch. These guys are great. Okay. I am going to go back in with a little more Stormy Sky, because I need it slightly darker. Alrighty. There we go. And I want to get these done because I got a bunch of other ones that I want to show you at the end. There we go. That's a nice blend. Oh, finger marks won't make any difference because I will be doing a water technique on this. Now, I don't want to get that anywhere else. So I'm going to move that. This I'm going to put to the side. Well, actually, no, because I'm doing them both at the same time. All right, so on this one, I am going to do a combination of, whoops, gesso. So I'm just digging into my gesso here. Whoa, dog hair. Thank you, Maya, for the contribution. So I'm going to get some gesso here, close it up. And the other thing that gesso does too is it extends the life of your fluffy stuff, so you don't need quite as much fluffy stuff if you're planning to use it as a texture paste. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that. And I'm mixing these all together. So this is going to hopefully be stronger when I'm done messing with them. And that's kind of what I want to show you. So along one side, I'm just texture pasting up. There we go. And then along the other side, I'm going to do some stenciling. You don't want to play too long, because if you do, you find that stuff mushes under. This is a little liquidy, so you will find that it goes quite a bit underneath. And do some of my famous hatching lines. Just to get some stuff going on there. And pull out some smooshes. Smooshes! It's my new word. Okay. Now, because I've already mixed this, I cannot put it back into the container of white gesso. So I'm going to wipe off my spatula, and I am just going to wipe down my area. Set this aside for a minute. And the nice thing about this is the fluffy stuff will be fine for several minutes. I haven't timed how long, but I was working for about 15 minutes between two different projects, and it still fluffed up wonderfully. Now I'm going to go in, and I'm just going to add some gesso. Just clump it out there. And this we're going to add the color on afterwards. A little bit more. Okay, so now I'm not mixing these two like I did just previously. Oh, perfect. There we go. I am going to put splotches and I'll just show you what I've done here. So I've got splotches of the fluffy stuff, and now I'm just going to smush that around without mixing too much. And I'll clean off my spatula along the edges. Okay. All right. Everything goes into that bin of water you should always have when you're doing mixed media. All right. And now I'm going to wipe down. Putting in these two. And I'm just going to, I hope I'm going to turn on my my heat tool, And you let me know if it's too loud. This one tends to be quiet, and I'm not sure if it's going to be too loud. If it's going to be too loud, then I will turn off my sound, but I kind of like to talk about what's happening as I'm drying things up. So obviously this one will take longer to dry than this one because it is thicker. How's the sound? Can everybody still hear me? Hi, Leslie. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Margaret. You haven't missed anything, Margaret. I just put some ink on this one, and then I mix gesso and fluffy stuff together and placed it down. On this one, I just left them more isolated with no ink underneath. The other thing I should mention is it's really good to get your heat tool heated up prior to doing this technique, because you want to make sure that it's nice and hot. So I get it all over, sort of looking like it's drying up, and then I go in and I seriously heat sections. That's what I've found has worked best for me. So I'm just going to get this a little more dry on this side. And there is some play time with the fluffy stuff. It does allow for messing around on a different project or getting materials together for the next step. Okay, so that's that. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm really going to heat this up. Now you can see that the distress ink is coming up through the white on the side that I am drawing, and that's because distress is affected by liquid, and the fluffy stuff and gesso mixed together is got a liquid base. So it will pull, it won't stay flat white, but it will pull some of the distress color from underneath. Now, if you were to use archival ink, it likely would not pull. And I know that Alexis mixed some ink in, regular ink in with what she was doing the other day. And you can mix inks in with your fluffy stuff and it will color it. But if it's a distress ink, you won't get as bright a color as if it's an alcohol ink, because distress ink is water-based. Okay, now we're starting to get some action here. So let me show you what's slowly starting to happen. Whoa, that is hot. So if you can see, it is starting to bubble up. There are some flat areas that aren't bubbling. And my experience is that when the thinner you have it, the more crispy the surface looks. The thicker you have it, the more bubbly and puffy it gets. So just keeping that in mind for when you're planning. All right. So looking at this one, we have some fluffy effect happening here in the smudge. And the gesso I was using was very liquidy. We have some puffing happening, thick puffy. And then we have some of this little thin kind of cratery puffiness happening. So all of that is because we mix the two things together and then put them with the stencil and the spatula on at one time. Now this side has the two things applied separately. Sometimes they'll cross each other and sometimes they won't. So I'm just going to quickly go over this. There we go. We're starting to get some action. Really good action. I just love this stuff. It's like chemistry. Seeing what you can do to change its habits. Oh, we got some really good stuff happening at the bottom here. And this is going to be intermittent because it's not completely mixed in. Okay, just a couple more seconds. And here, just a couple more. Oops. Make sure you don't do this anywhere near your fluffy stuff in the bottle. Just to make sure we've got everything puffing as much as we can on this side. All right. So here is what it looks like when it's mixed with gesso. So you get flat areas with no texture, and then you have these areas that have more of the texture of the paste. My camera doesn't seem to focus very well, but you can see that there's like fluffy stuff in between, but then there's these very flat areas, and that's because we mixed the normal gesso with the fluffy stuff. And this has made the fluffy stuff a little bit, this side is a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? Delicate. This side, like I'm hammering that big bubble here, and it's popping up every time because it has been mixed with the gesso. And as I said earlier, if you mix it with the gesso, it gives it just a little bit more substance, so it doesn't fall off if you're to go over top of something. So what I want to do now is I'm going to mix a couple of dots of my fossilized amber in with some fluffy stuff. Whoop. Whoa, I'm almost out of fluffy stuff. Okay, and we'll see how that goes. Where's my thing here? Now I still use a spatula for this. You can use a paintbrush or anything you want actually. But remember that if it's distress, you're going to see a lot, it's going to be a much paler color than if it's not distress ink, because distress is activated by water. Okay, so there, I want a little bit more. And I probably have some regular yellow somewhere, but I love my distress. So that's what we're using. One more drop. Alrighty. And this is why I always buy reinkers, because sometimes I need a more intense color for whatever, for mixing reasons or whatever. So I just mix this all together. Now this is quite liquidy, so I'm actually going to paint this on rather than use my spatula. Where is, oh, sorry, I got all my things in the cleaning area, which is good to do. I have to make sure they're dry on one side. Okay, so now over here, I'm just going to take a little bit of this and just splop it through there. Slop it through there. Oh, it's coming up pretty sloppy. Pretty sloppy. There, that's a little better. And some over there. Some down here. And I'm going to go right over top of that. A bit there, a little bit there, there. And I am going to go around my edges. So I'm going to go in and I'm just going to put a thick bit around the edges. And you'll see what that looks like. So it's kind of like distressing it without the distress. Okay, here we go. And so one side is going to be thicker, the other side is going to be thinner, and we'll see what happens already. I'm going to put that aside, put that into my water. Whoops, this goes into my water as well. Wipe up the remaining stuff. Wiping this up because I don't want that to be all over everything. Alrighty, you ready for this? Get it all over sort of dried up. Now this is, remember, straight fluffy stuff with re-inker. I'm just getting it to the heated point, and then I'm going to really push in. And you can already start to see what's going on in the edge. So let me lift it up and see what's happening along that edge. It gives you kind of a fake frame almost, made out of fluffy stuff. Okay. And as I've said, the thinner it is, the more broken up it gets. The thicker it is, the more voluminous it is. And you can put layers of fluffy on top of each other. You just have to make sure the bottom layer is nice and thick so that you can see the thinner top layer and it's more bulbous. Alrighty. Okay, now, so I'm just gonna cool that down a second. All right, so take a look at what we have going on here. We have all this three-dimensional stuff at the top edge. And there's where we have it over top of itself, but with a different color, another bulbous edge. So this is your finished piece, whichever is up or down, except, guess what? We need some water. All right. So I'm going to get that so it doesn't sit in a pool of water. And I'm going to take some of the water out and let the rest do its thing. Now you're not going to get much happening, obviously, around where the white is, where the what's it called? The dry gesso. So it won't, the color is stuck underneath that. But where you get the stuff happening is where there is no gesso. And there's just fluffy stuff, because fluffy stuff itself actually will disintegrate with water. That's why you don't put too much on. So this is what we call making lots of layers of things. And I'm just going to take the back side, do a little dry. All right. And there is one finished piece. Isn't that awesome? So crazy. And look at the detail you're getting in your inks there. And imagine if you threw a little bit of salt on that, you might pull some more color out of there. Or if you threw even dusted with some dry watercolor. So lots of stuff going on. And see, these used to be white, these guys, but now they've pulled the color and they've turned blue. So lots of things happening on there, and it will continue to evolve as it dries. So let's go to our second one. Now our second one, the fluffy stuff isn't necessarily mixed in, so you can see that this is definitely gesso, it's smooth, but over here you've got the fluffy stuff, and it's nice and thick where it's thickly bubbly, but then you have these sections. Let me see if I can get a better... You have these sections where there's little teeny tiny texture, and that's where all the magic happens, is in the sections where you've got small amounts of bubbling, because it looks like a whole different product. Look at there, you've got little tiny ones to big ones in that section. I just love this stuff. I'm having so much fun. Okay, now we are going to do a different technique on the top of this, and we have to do it really quick. So we're going to take some oxide spray, Stormy Sky, and I need to get my, excuse me a minute. Sorry, I should have had my spray box handy. So we're going to get the spray box, and we've got to make sure we've really shaken this up, because with it being oxide, all the chalk remains on the bottom, and when the sides are looking the same as the bottom, you know you're ready to go. Okay, so there we have it. And I always, before I put the cap on, just wipe off. And you can see what's happening already inside my box. It's kind of interesting. And then I'm going to get some oxide spray. And I'm going to spray that in there. So these both are oxide. That's, I'm going to wipe that off. Oops. Made a bit of a mess with that one. Let's pull this out for a moment. So I'm just going to clean this up before it gets everywhere. So I've got it inside my lid and around the outside of the bottle. You will have the odd oxide do that, and it's just dependent on your space and whether or not you have a humid space, a dry space, how hot it is or cold it is. All those things affect the pressure inside the bottle. Oh, I'm liking what's happening here. Okay, I'm going to dry that a little bit, because I already am just looking at this going, whoa, I think I might stop. But maybe not. And I think I'm going to make sure everything is sort of set, and then I'm going to dry it from the bottom. There we go. Because then I won't burn my fluff. Not that I've had any luck doing that anyway. So this has already got some oxidization happening because of the heat of my heat gun. But I think I'm going to go in and do a little bit more stuff. But look at that. It's like crazy goodness. It's not quite dry. I love it. I love it. And we haven't even put water on it yet. All right. So with that in mind, I am just going to start going in and topping. And this is why, so I've gone in and I've topped the fluffy stuff. There you go. You can see how I've topped it there. And it gets there on your thing. So what you want to do, just rub a little bit off so it doesn't harden. And then you can sop all that up, or you can use it for another project. And I'm going to take some of my chipped sapphire, which is a dark blue, and I'm going to go in and add some of that to the top of some of these places too. And I don't mind there being some boxiness to it. All right. Now, we're going to add some water. And we're going to let this move around a little bit. And I still think I need some more blue. A lot of green in there. I want to get back to a little more blue. Just going to dig this in. And I'm not pushing very hard. I just want to pull some more of that dark blue in there. Okay. And a tiny bit of spray there. A little more water. And a tap. All right. Now let's dry that up. Make sure we are not too wet here. Double check that I've cleaned my stuff because I don't know when I'm going back to that. There we go. And I still have one more step after this. Alrighty. There we go. Okay. Putting a little bit of this on the board. This is the chipped sapphire. Throw in some water. Get my, clean my brush for a minute. It's always good to have more than one utensil. I didn't pull one out because this is additional thinking where I'm going into right now. Oh, it's not dark enough. That's too much. So, try that again. I don't have the chipped sapphire, what do you call it? Oh, there we go. I'm using just like a splatter brush because I didn't pull out my splatter brush at all. This was just something that came up in my brain as I was finishing this off. So I thought I would just use what I have handy. We got that. Wipe down this. And I need one layer of this as well. There we go. Rinse out my brush. Just going to pull that all together. Add more. Awesome. And I think that is done. And we'll just dry that up. Now, I've made this in a 4x6, but imagine this in your art journal or your junk journal, and then when you're ready to do something with it, you can add your photograph or your statement, or you can put some gems and things on there to use it in your actual artwork. Because this is really just a piece of a much larger piece, or it can be a small piece of a much smaller piece. So it's a starting jumping off point for working with art journals and junk journals and layouts and cards. All right, final dry. Sorry, I needed a bit of a drink of water. And what I would also do when it's thoroughly dry is go back in with my Distress Glaze and bring out some of that yummy color. So let's see. There we go. Look at the texture on that. And the colors. It's very, 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 very cool. So these are the two that I did tonight with you. And I'm just going to show you some other things. So one of the things I did was just put it through a stencil with a spatula on the pre-existing background that was Stormy Sky at the top and Chipped Sapphire at the bottom, and I smooshed it on. And then I added the stencil with the fluffy stuff. Then I heated everything and I splattered it. There, oops, one too many. And it created this neat little textury piece. So that was very simple, using it just as it is. Now this one is my bumblebee piece. Now I had it mixed with gesso and fluffy stuff, and I put black soot into it. And of course the black soot isn't quite black, but it's black enough. And what I did first was I put down the white stencil with fluffy stuff and gesso mixed in through the stencil to create the honeycomb. Whoops, sorry. To create the honeycomb. And then I let everything dry, and I went back in with my wild honey and went over top of everything. And because these are stronger mixed in with the gesso, they didn't get worn off. And then I used the gesso and the fluffy stuff mixed together with some black soot and put that through a stencil. And it was pretty watery, so that's why I didn't get quite a clear outline. And then the lines where it was not exposed to anything, I went back in with just fluffy stuff and did really thick lines so that they would bubble right up. You can see how bubbly they are. And then over top of that, I just used my dauber and very lightly polished it off with wild honey. And isn't that a great color? So that's another one that I did. And then this one, I did a bunch of different things. So I pre-colored the top with chipped sapphire and the bottom with stormy sky. And then I used a stencil and I just drew this through the stencil lines. And then what I did is I took my spatula and cleaned off the top of it so nothing would be hanging over the spatula. So that is actually drawn right into the stencil lines as opposed to using a spatula to get it across everything. So it was fairly thin, and you can see that the texture is very crispy and bubbly, little tiny, tiny, tiny bubbles. Tiny bubbles. And then down here I used a stencil that was like a snow ridge from Tim Holtz. And the first thing I did was I used Snowfall grit paste, and I did the outline. Let's see if I can get the shine there for you to see it, maybe on this side. Okay, so you can see an outline of like the icy ridge, and then after that I put very thick fluffy stuff all on its own across the top of the icicles, which come down here, here, and here. And then I took a little bit of the crackle paste, which is clear, and I went right in where the two meet. So you have three, it's very hard to picture it on here, but you have three levels of iciness. So you have the distress kind of clear, glittery grit paste called Snowfall. Then you have a shinier, cracked surface from the crackle, and then you have the actual fluffy stuff snow on top. And it's you can't see it, but it's really, 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 really gorgeous. It really mimics icicles and snow damming and all those things. And that was fun to do. Now, this one was when I did my first experiment with blending the two together and using a spatula. And I didn't do anything to it, but leave it just like that because I fell in love with it instantly. Look at that piece. It's crazy. So you have everything from the tight little crackly stuff in here to the flat matte gel with gesso without anything in it to the big bubbly popcorny looking things. So I encourage you, if you really want popcorny looking things, you got to put a lot of this on. Anyway, so that is my final one. And I'm going to leave it just the way it is because it is gorgeous. So that's what I did today, playing around. It's the first chance I've had, otherwise I would have probably been more prepared with a whole bunch of other samples. And there's the two we did today. And I hope you really try this out because it is a lot of fun, and there are still more ways to use it. There's a bunch of things that I want to try. Having tried this, my brain is going crazy, and there's other things I want to mix in with it and create different things with. So I hope you enjoyed this. My time is up. If you have any questions, please feel free to continue to put them into the feed. And I'm signing off now. I'll see you later. Have a great night.